So, welcome to another episode of the Testing Ground TIC Talks, a podcast where we discuss all things TIC with the experts who are providing technical expertise and driving growth across multiple sectors. TIC impacts every industry and every product that we interact with. TIC companies are the unsung hero in my eyes and certainly keep the world moving and, most importantly, safe. Darren and I will also be uncovering the human side of these executives in high pressure environments, occasionally taking it slightly off course with questions from us. For today's episode, Darren and I are very grateful to be joined by Richard Bright, CEO of the American Council of Independent Laboratories, an association that Strata Group is very proud to have become a member of. Thank you very much for being here, Richard.
Thank you for the invitation, gentlemen. Always a pleasure working with you and hoping I can add some value to this podcast for you.
For sure. Well, look, I think to really kick us off, Rich, why don't you kind of explain to us what the ACIL is?
Thank you. Yes. So ACIL is we were founded in 1937 in New York City. We are the only trade association here in the US that represents the third-party independent accredited lab testing community. So, we represent commercial, scientific, and testing labs. They're all professional services firms engaged in testing, product certification, consulting, and research and development. We do have other members outside the labs themselves. So we have a lot of our manufacturers and suppliers and service providers to the industry. Accrediting bodies, obviously a huge part of what we do when we talk about third-party independent testing labs, and a few other ancillary type memberships. But that's what we are. We are a trade association representing our industry.
Excellent.
Right.
Yeah. How did you end up leading this trade association then, Richard?
Interesting question. I started an association management company quite a few years ago when I was managing another association, but I was consulting with ACIL for quite a few years, mainly on working with the manufacturers and the suppliers. There was some change in management, and myself and my partner back then, who was their director of government relations, we were approached by the board suggesting that maybe we could align our efforts and help sort of re-engineer ACIL quite a bit. So that was probably back in 2013. My partner since retired quite a few years ago now. So I've been at the helm with my staff reporting to the board of directors at least 10 years, probably longer than that, as without my partner in play here. So that's how I fell into this. It's been a great industry. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later on here, but great set of people, great values, and it's been a pleasure.
Loving it by the sounds of it.
I have to say that. We're all partner. No, I'm kidding. Go
ahead. For sure. And what is the real benefit to the TIC industry then of having something like the ACIL?
Sure. Well, one of the main reasons I think we exist is really for our advocacy efforts, right? So as I said earlier, we are the only trade association representing the testing labs in particular. So we as a organization provide their voice, right? Collective voice. So we work with all of the regulatory bodies, obviously mainly EPA, FDA, CDC, and others, obviously, NIST, etc. So we give the ability or provide the ability for the industry to come together collectively to work with a government, alongside government, to ensure public health and safety, right, and the health of the market and the independence of the market. So that's first and foremost. Even though we represent labs that are, competitive in nature, we have a lot of small to mid-sized labs around the country too, but there is a lot of collective sharing of information. There are some of our members that do business with each other within the community. There's a lot of best practice education about growing the lab because things are changing constantly. And then obviously, just like a lot of other trade associations, we have other member benefits too. which I'm not sure if we're getting into later. Like we provide health insurance programs we've just launched. We've got a free HR consulting program and other products and discounts with some of our manufacturer friends. So there's a variety of reasons people join, but primarily in a very heavy regulated industry, having that voice and that access to those kind of decision makers is critical, not only in the agencies, but also on the Hill, right? So we're very, in the House and the Senate, very active with committees and various other things. So that's primarily, why we exist.
And is it just the US or is it Europe as well?
Just the US. We've got a sister association up there in Canada that we communicate with, and obviously there are other groups in Europe. A lot of our members are obviously play in Europe, Asia, etc., but we're totally 100% focused on the US.
Lovely. And how do TIC businesses join the ACIL, and then following that, what are the benefits?
So easy to join. You can go online, like most organizations, or you can request an application or contact myself. So it's easy. Our URL is www.acil.org for organization. So easy for them to go and access all the information there, including the online application. So again, we have different membership types, as I mentioned, and there's different structures on pricing depending on what category you're in. But it's easy to belong, fill out the application, and we get you started. I will say that we're an institutional membership, so it's not individuals that are joining, it's the organization. So you can have as many employees involved with our different sections as needed. So again, very easy to join. Was your other question, what are some of the other benefits for joining?
Yeah, you mentioned that previously, but but maybe let's look at a small business. 50 employees or so. I would imagine that might have the most impact joining the ACIL, but what would a small business in the TIC industry gain from joining such an association?
Yeah, good question. So it's not that large versus small necessarily have different needs. They may just have different fires they're putting out at any one time, right? So the much larger labs, right? So the international labs that are playing here are very much focused on our advocacy initiatives, right? And they have a lot of individuals that work with us in that regard. The smaller labs are just as interested in that, but they're probably more interested in lab best practice, right? So we're having issues with rising insurance costs. What else can we do from an HR perspective? So they're more interested in some of the best practice, the education, learning how to grow the business, quite frankly, which is obviously key to any business. You're stagnant, you don't survive. So a lot of those benefits are there. There's a peer network with our smaller to mid-sized labs. So they're very much a peer-to-peer kind of experience. So those are some of the major reasons they would get involved, plus some of the member benefits and discounts programs that we have, similar to the ones that we have with you too, right, from an HR perspective. So the goal is that they pay their dues, but if they're involved with some of the discount programs that we have that, outside of all the other value we provide, that maybe their dues dollars are well invested because they're getting discounts and savings across the board that pay for themselves.
Sure. And as you kind of touched on that, the focus is within the labs businesses, right? Is there specific verticals where you're focusing more heavily, such as the environmental space? I think is a predominant player for you guys, but is it really anyone within the lab services business?
Yeah, certainly we are open to anyone, right? But our core sections, as we call them, right, which are really testing disciplines. You mentioned environmental. We've got very, very strong group in environmental. And remember, some of our members play in multiple verticals, right? So environmental is very large. We've got some of the largest players here in the US, Eurofins, Pace, and others, as I've mentioned, plus again, some of the other smaller mid-sized labs. So environmental, food sciences is very much a large market for us. And within that, we've started a cannabis science section. So we're involved with cannabis and hemp. I will tell you, a lot of our members there are members testing cannabis and hemp. There are others that do a lot of federal work, and others are really just sitting on the sidelines here to see where this ends up legislatively and There's not a lot of standards out there right now from a national, well, there isn't really one from a national perspective. So we're monitoring cannabis. We also have a dietary supplements working group. There's a lot of attention to that right now, in particular with the FDA and the new human food department, and they're looking at dietary supplements because they really haven't been regulated, right? So that's a big play. Other two are construction materials testing and engineering, geotech, and lastly, our conformity assessment, our product certifiers, traditionally aerospace, that kind of stuff, EMC, but those are our main verticals. It doesn't mean that somebody can't come in and say, hey, we got a need here. We're very nimble and we can move to react to any needs, but we're going to have enough members in that space that want to be able to do something. But those are our core markets.
And do some members as well talk to you about markets that they are seeing kind of appear and be more prevalent in the world, such as cybersecurity and AI? Does anyone ever kind of discuss those with you, and what's your take?
Yeah, absolutely. So, with our food sciences section, we were very involved. And again, being an association, we want to be forward thinking, but we're also we're easy to be reactive whenever we need to too, right? So, but the dietary supplements working group stemmed out of a group of labs that really felt the need that there wasn't any regulation. There needs to be more regulation from public health and safety. So that group sort of built itself, right? So organically. Cybersecurity, we've dealt with more cybersecurity on the EMC, or the conformity assessment section. We're not as involved with cybersecurity and in its entirety, right? And certification that I know that's coming in and around that. I think that's going to happen. It just hasn't stemmed out into a separate working group yet. But things do morph as and when needed, as they say.
Okay, lovely. And looking at 2025 for ACIL, obviously with big milestone with St. Paddy's Day, which you were indulged in. Are there any other major events that leaders, tech businesses should look to mark in their calendar, with kind of led by the ACIL?
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned St. Paddy's Day, so I've forgotten everything that I was going to tell you about 2020 now. It's been crazy year, right? So new regime in power here, major changes that they've been making to agencies. You've seen that in the news. So it's hard to tell right now. We had our what we call our policies and practices meeting in Washington, DC in March. And that was a great success. But there's a lot of uncertainty with the agencies where things are going. So we're just waiting to see. Obviously, we still have contacts with all of the agencies, but they're trying to work themselves out too, right? So we just don't know where that's going to end up. So we're keeping an eye on that. But the tick space, and it's just growing, right? It's going to continue to grow. It's a huge industry, and you see it in Europe too. So we don't see that changing with anything that's going on here in Washington, D.C. More the opposite, right? And when you look at markets like dietary supplements, which I mentioned before, that really weren't regulated, there's huge opportunity for the testing labs, and in particular, the independent testing labs have the ability to be able to do a lot of volume of testing, right? And they can continue to grow that. So from a public health and safety standpoint, we're critical. So I feel nothing but good things for our membership. Our biggest challenge personally from a membership organization is there's still so much acquisition in the marketplace, right? So we've got to work through that, and we're doing a lot now to do even more outreach to the smaller mid-sized labs to ensure that we're meeting their needs, and we've got a much broader base because acquisition isn't going to stop, that's for sure.
Yeah, certainly grew a lot last year, didn't it?
Yeah, it's looking like another prosperous year for M&A activity. Particularly, a lot of companies are moving from Europe, where they've had a lot of success, and also kind of breaking into the North American market too, right? So that, I guess, can kind of widen your talent pool slightly as well for some new players coming in?
Yeah, we're seeing them, and they, we had a couple at our annual meeting last year when you guys were at our annual meeting. Yeah, so we welcome them, right? But we want anybody that's for the good of the industry, and it's going to happen regardless. So you've got to be a part of it. You got to adapt to it. So yeah, but all in all, again, world economy and everything else, I really don't see any concerns for our businesses volume wise. And I may be stealing a future question here, but the challenges we've got are more workforce. We just don't have the workforce, right? So we don't have the talent, and right now we don't have necessarily the policies in place to bring in the talent either. So that's a huge issue. Also, just rising costs, right? The cost of HR, the cost of people, the cost of technology, the cost of everything. So those I think are two of the biggest challenges for our members. But the rest of the industry, I think, on a whole, is pretty strong.
I agree. Well, look, I don't think, unless you have any questions as well, Rich, I think Harry, I'm kind of taking over his podcast slightly as well today. But
somebody had to, Darren.
I think maybe I'll let you finish off, but I think Harry normally finishes off with a question from yourself for next future guests. So just wondering if you could maybe fill us in on anything that you would like to ask potential next.
So, well, it depends who your next customer is, right? Your next podcast client. But you guys are obviously well connected in the industry. I'd have more of a question for you. Are you seeing any changes on the HR side and the talent pool? Is the talent pool increasing, diminishing? What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, you go.
I think the TIC market has always been a candidate-led market, so there's always been not enough individuals. And I think we've seen over the last few years that individuals who were working in the TIC space are maybe now looking outside, and it could be for various reasons, wanting to focus on one specific product or focus on one industry. It could be for maybe obviously industry pays very well. Are they looking to be compensated better? But then kind of on the flip side, people from outside the industry are always intrigued to learn more about the TIC space. So it's kind of, there's peaks and troughs with hiring. There's certainly roles which are easier to find talent for than others, as everyone will know. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a seesaw. I think we are finding industry manufacturers, they're always, TIC business is always interested in their idea because they're working with the product rather than selling a service, for example. But yeah, up and down, really. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think with both of those points. And one thing that we've definitely seen more of is private equity coming into the space. A lot of these businesses now are led by PE-backed companies that are putting a lot of investment into continuously keeping growing, which I think is really positive. And then we're also seeing definitely some of the bigger players, the SGSs, Eurofins, really kind of loading up their M&A teams for what looks like a pretty prosperous 2025 and a lot more acquisitions to come.
Yeah, busy start to the year, I think, for talent.
Very cool. And thank you for allowing me to answer that question. It now feels like it's my podcast. This is awesome.
It's not. Oh, it is yours now. Isn't it? Are you going to tell us more about the photos in the background, Rich?
Yeah, I'm. One of them is. Oh, it's a big sailboat here. I'm a big boater these days. I'm more putting an engine on the back of it than a big sail. But that's out of in Newport in Rhode Island. So it's not my boat. Put it that way.
Okay, and that's how you decompress from the stresses of the TIC and ACIL. Well, there are no stresses.
There are no stresses. No, I have a great board of directors. No, but getting out on the water here, as you can tell, obviously, you guys know I'm from the UK too, but we have a little bit of a longer summer here, so it's better to be able to get on the water here than necessarily in the UK these days. But I appreciate the time hanging with you guys and the opportunity to be on the this podcast, and also for your membership. So we're looking forward to seeing you in the upcoming annual meeting too.
Sure.
Well, thank you very much, Rich, for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, Rich.